What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of My Shitty Kitchen. We're going to be taking a look at a classic dish that, until today, I've never had the pleasure of eating or cooking, but I've seen it in TV shows and loads of cookbooks, and I've always wanted to try it. We're talking, of course, about Welsh Rarebit, which was actually called Welsh Rabbit at one point, but for some reason, people decided to change it. Anyway, it was called Welsh Rabbit because in 17th century Wales, cheese was often thought of as the poor man's meat, and it's no secret as to why. Cheese is known for having a variety of flavors and textures, and when used correctly, it can be just as decadent, if not more so, than your average steak. The dish varies from person to person, and you can make it a bunch of different ways, but for today, we're going to be making a beer and cheese sauce, slathering it on some crusty bread, and then baking it in the oven. To get started, you're going to need a few things. Firstly, get the best cheddar cheese you can find. I'm using some aged sharp cheddar and a little bit of Gruyere. Cheese is the star of this dish, so don't be afraid to splurge on it a little bit. Next, you'll need a few spices. I'm going with fresh ground pepper, paprika, and nutmeg. Cayenne pepper or anything else that's kind of spicy is fantastic for this as well. You'll also need about 4 to 6 ounces or 1 cup of bitter stout beer. I'm going with regular draft Guinness for this. Heavy cream is going to make up the base of our sauce, so you'll need about 16 ounces or 3 cups of it. The last liquid we're going to use is Worcestershire sauce, and you'll only need about a tablespoon of it. You're also going to need some all-purpose flour and a stick of butter. Lastly, for the co-star of this dish, you'll need some thick, crusty bread. You want something that can stand up to the onslaught of luscious cheese sauce, and bread like this is pretty much the only thing that does the trick. Now that you've got all your ingredients out of the way and assembled, let's jump into the dish. Start by cutting your bread if you need to. Since I'm using a baguette, I'm going with a cut on the bias since it's easy to eat, it looks good on the plate, and gives us a bit more surface area to spread on some cheese. Once you're good to go with that, preheat your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit, oil up your bread slices, season them with a pinch of salt, and toss them in the oven to toast. Pull them out when they look something like this, leave them on the tray, and keep the oven on. You'll need it later. And now, the fun part. Over medium-high heat, melt a little over a tablespoon of butter in your favorite saucepan. Try not to use one with a non-stick surface because we'll be using a whisk in this one and it'll tear the Teflon coating off the bottom. Anyway, once your butter is melted, drop in a little bit of flour and work it together using your whisk. What we've just made here is a roux, which is a common thickener for most sauces. The consistency you want for the roux here should look something like Play-Doh. If it looks like wet sand and it's kind of loose, that's okay too. If your roux is too dry though, add more butter. If it's too wet, add more flour. It's pretty easy to fix. Once everything's nice and homogenized and you can't see any flour, you'll want to cook your roux for a few minutes. This allows us to get rid of that raw flour taste and gives the roux a nice nutty flavor. You'll know it's about done when it starts to turn golden or dark brown and it smells like buttered popcorn. I know that sounds weird, but for some reason, that's what I think of when I'm making a roux and I smell the smell that a roux smells like. Moving on though, pour a little bit of cream into the roux and start whisking it together. If it stabilizes and you don't get any lumps, you're good to go. Once everything is emulsified, keep pouring in more cream until you get the base of a sauce with a nice, thick texture. If you stick a spoon in the sauce, it should coat the back of it without sliding off. This texture is referred to as nappe. If the sauce is too thick, just keep adding cream until you get the desired texture. Now, what we've basically made here is a very simple bechamel. The only difference from this to a traditional bechamel is that you'd bring your cream to a boil and steep onions, cloves, and a bay leaf in it, then add your roux. As a final note here before we move on, if you plan on thickening a sauce with a roux in the future, it's important to remember that opposites attract. If your roux is hot, your liquid should be cold and vice versa. If they're both the same temperature, the starches and gluten in the flour will immediately develop and you'll wind up with a lumpy, unthickened sauce. Thankfully though, if you followed my directions up till this point, your cream should be cold and the roux should be hot, so you're good to go. If that's the case, go ahead and season your imitation bechamel with the nutmeg, paprika, and fresh pepper. Depending on your cheese you're using, I'd add a bit of salt as well, but I'm gonna go ahead and wait till the end to do that. Whisk all of your spices in, and then add your beer and Worcestershire sauce and whisk those in as well. Now, at this point, we've got a lot of flavors working here, and they need a few minutes to develop. Keep gently whisking the sauce as it simmers for a bit so all those oil-based spices we've added have a chance to incorporate. Once that's done though, take the sauce off the heat and start adding in your cheese a little at a time and whisk it to incorporate. Keep tasting the sauce along the way and keep adding cheese until you get the taste you're looking for. As a side note, if you leave the sauce on the heat, you run the risk of breaking it, and you've come way too far to fail now. Plus, the sauce will be plenty hot enough to melt the cheese. Now, if you're looking to go the extra mile and you want a velvety, decadent sauce, you'll want to push it through a fine mesh strainer. This gets rid of any tiny roux chunks that may have solidified and any other impurities and leaves us with a nice, silky sauce. After you've managed that, ladle a generous portion of the cheese sauce over your toasted bread, grate a little bit of the fresh stuff on for good measure, and chuck the whole thing into the oven until it's nice and bubbly. And that's it, guys. Delicious Welsh Rarebit, or at least my interpretation of it anyway. After trying this dish, I'm pretty satisfied with the results. It was pretty rich and over the top, which is to be expected though. I do wish I had some better cheese lying around, but unfortunately I live in the middle of nowhere and it's extremely hard to get a hold of the good stuff. But I'm interested to hear from those of you out there that have had this dish a few times. How did I do? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you like this video or just learned something new today, don't forget to tap that thumbs up button on your way out, and if you make this dish or any of the others that you want to show me, send me pics on Twitter at MyShittyKitchen. That's all for now though. I'll see you at the next video, and as always, thank you so much for watching.